Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Horizon, watching the stars pass by through the large front window. The ship was moving through deep space, far from Earth and any human colony. They had been traveling for 3 months now, mapping new star systems and looking for anything interesting in this part of the galaxy. Jake was a tall man with brown hair and tired eyes. He had been exploring space for 15 years and he loved his job. Every day brought something new, something that no human had ever seen before. Today felt different, though. His crew had been picking up strange signals from a nebula nearby, and Jake wanted to check it out. "Captain, we're getting close to the Helix Nebula," said Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks from his seat at the navigation controls. Ryan was young, maybe 28, with red hair and a quick smile. He was good at his job and never complained. About the long trips away from home. Jake nodded and walked over to where Dr. Lisa Carter was working at her science station. Lisa was the ship's chief scientist, a woman in her early 40s who knew more about space creatures than anyone else in the fleet. She had short black hair and always wore her lab coat, even on the bridge. "What do you think about those signals, Lisa?" Jake asked. Lisa looked up from her computer screen, her eyebrows pulled together in a frown. "I've never seen anything like them, Captain. The patterns are too complex to be natural. They're coming from deep inside the nebula, and they seem to repeat every few hours." Jake felt his heart beat faster. In his 15 years of exploring, he had found many strange things, but nothing that looked like it might be intelligent. "Show me," he said. Lisa turned her screen so Jake could see it. Lines of light moved across the display, forming patterns that looked almost like music made visible. The lines would grow thick and thin, fast and slow, in ways that seemed to have meaning. "It's like the nebula is trying to talk," Lisa said quietly. "But that's impossible. Nebulas are just gas and dust. They can't think." Jake studied the patterns on the screen. Something about them reminded him of brain waves he had seen in medical books. "How big is this nebula?" he asked. "About 4 light years across," Ryan called from his station. "It's huge, Captain." "Bigger than our entire solar system." Jake felt a chill run down his back. If something that big was intelligent, it would be the most important discovery in human history. But it could also be dangerous. "Any other ships in the area?" he asked. "No, sir," Ryan replied. "We're the only ones out here. The nearest human outpost is 6 months away." Jake walked back to his captain's chair and sat down. The Horizon was a good ship with a crew of 42 people. They had weapons if they needed them, but nothing that could fight something as big as a nebula. Still, he had to know what was making those signals. "Lisa, keep watching those patterns. See if you can figure out what they mean. Ryan, take us closer to the nebula, but keep our distance. If anything changes, I want to know right away." "Yes, sir," both officers replied. The ship changed direction, and Jake could see the nebula getting bigger in the front window. It was beautiful, like a giant cloud of pink and purple gas with bright stars scattered through it. But now that he knew about the signals, it looked different. It looked alive. Communications Officer Betty Williams turned around in her chair. Betty was a small woman with blonde hair who could make their radio work better than anyone else in the fleet. "Captain, I'm getting more signals now. They're getting stronger as we get closer." "Can you tell what they're saying?" Jake asked. "Not yet, but I'm recording everything. Maybe we can figure it out later." Jake nodded and looked at his crew. They were all good people, and he trusted them with his life. But he also knew that what they were doing was dangerous. No human had ever tried to talk to something like this before. The ship kept moving toward the nebula, and Jake could see it filling more and more of the window. The gas clouds moved slowly, like water in a gentle current. Sometimes bright flashes of light would appear deep inside the clouds, and Jake wondered if those were the signals Lisa was detecting. "Captain," Lisa said, her voice excited, "the patterns are changing. They're getting more complex, like they're responding to us getting closer." Jake felt his mouth go dry. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. Look at this." Lisa put the new patterns on the main screen where everyone could see them. The lines were different now, more active, like they were trying harder to communicate. "Betty, any luck with the signals?" Jake asked. "They're definitely not random, Captain. There's structure to them, like a language. But it's not like any language I've ever seen. It's more like mathematics, but alive." Jake stood up and walked to the window. The nebula was close now, close enough that he could see the individual gas clouds swirling around each other. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Captain," Ryan said, "I'm reading some strange energy signatures from the nebula. The matter inside isn't normal." "It's something our computers don't recognize." Jake turned around. "What do you mean?" "I mean, the gas in there isn't made of normal atoms. It's something else, something that shouldn't exist according to our science books." Lisa looked up from her station. "That would explain how it could be intelligent. If it's made of exotic matter, it might be able to think in ways we can't understand." Jake felt like he was standing at the edge of a cliff. Part of him wanted to turn the ship around and go back to Earth to report what they had found. But another part of him, the part that had made him an explorer, wanted to keep going. Humans had always been curious about the unknown, and this was the biggest unknown any human had ever faced. "Captain," Betty said, "the signals are getting stronger. I think it knows we're here." Jake looked at his crew. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. He thought about his wife back on Earth and how she had kissed him goodbye 3 months ago. He thought about all the explorers who had come before him, the ones who had crossed oceans and climbed mountains and reached for the stars because they had to know what was out there. "We keep going," he said finally, "but slowly. If anything seems dangerous, we leave immediately." The crew nodded and went back to their work. Jake stayed at the window, watching the nebula grow bigger and bigger. Somewhere in those swirling clouds was something that might be alive, something that had been waiting in the darkness of space for who knew how long. As the ship moved deeper into the nebula's outer edge, Jake could see the gas clouds beginning to surround them. The stars outside grew dim, and the only light came from the glowing gas all around them. It was like being inside a giant living creature. "Captain," Lisa said, her voice full of wonder, "I think we're about to make history." Jake nodded, his eyes fixed on the swirling clouds outside. Whatever was about to happen, he knew that humanity would never be the same. They were no longer alone in the universe, and they were about to meet something that had been dreaming in the darkness between the stars for longer than their species had existed. The adventure was just beginning. The UES horizon drifted deeper into the nebula, surrounded by swirling clouds of pink and purple gas. Captain Jake Morrison watched from the bridge as his crew worked to understand the strange signals that were getting stronger every hour. The patterns on their screens had changed again, becoming more complex and purposeful. "Captain, I think I'm making progress," said Communications Officer Betty Williams, her fingers flying over her keyboard. She had been working for 6 hours straight, trying to decode the mysterious signals. Dark circles had formed under her eyes, but she refused to take a break. Jake walked over to her station. "What have you found?" Betty pointed to her screen, which showed a series of numbers and symbols. "The signals are mathematical. They started with simple sequences like 2, 4, 6, 8. Then they moved to prime numbers. Now they're showing me the value of pi, but calculated to more decimal places than our computers can handle." Dr. Lisa Carter looked up from her own work. "It's trying to establish a common language. Mathematics is universal. Any intelligent species should understand basic mathematical concepts." Jake felt excitement building in his chest. "So it really is intelligent?" "More than that," Lisa said. "It's trying to communicate with us. Look at this." She turned her screen toward Jake. The display showed brainwave patterns, but they were enormous. "These are neural patterns, Captain, but they're spread across thousands of cubic miles of space. This thing has a mind bigger than anything we ever imagined." Ryan Brooks called from his navigation station. "Captain, the nebula is moving. Not fast, but it's definitely changing position. It's like it's turning to face us." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. Something that big turning to look at them was both amazing and terrifying. How long would it take for something that size to turn around? Based on the movement I'm seeing, maybe 12 hours for a full rotation, Ryan replied. But Captain, that's incredibly fast for something this massive. It's like it's eager to talk to us. Betty suddenly sat up straight in her chair. Captain, I'm getting something new. The mathematical sequences are changing. It's not just showing main numbers anymore. It's asking me questions. What kind of questions? Jake asked. Simple ones at first. Like, what is 2 plus 2? I sent back 4, and it responded with a pattern that felt like approval. Then it asked more complex questions about geometry and physics. I think it's testing our intelligence level. Jake walked to the center of the bridge. His crew was tired but excited. They all knew they were part of something historic. Betty, send back our answers. Let's show this thing what humans can do. For the next few hours, Betty worked with Lisa to answer the nebulous questions. They started with basic mathematics and moved to more complex physics problems. The Nebula seemed pleased with their responses, sending back patterns that felt like encouragement. Then something changed. The mathematical questions stopped, and new patterns appeared on the screens. These were different, more complex, almost like music made of light. It's not asking math questions anymore, Betty said, staring at her screen. I think it's trying to tell us something about itself. Lisa studied the patterns. These look like star charts, but ancient ones. Look at these constellation patterns. They don't match anything in our current star maps. Jake leaned over her shoulder. How old would they have to be to look like that? Millions of years, maybe more. Captain, I think this entity has been around for a very long time. It's showing us what the galaxy looked like when it was young. The patterns on the screen shifted again, and new images appeared. These showed solar systems forming and dying, stars being born and exploding, entire civilizations rising and falling. It was like watching the history of the galaxy in fast forward. My God, whispered Betty, it's been watching all of this happen. It's seen everything. Jake felt overwhelmed by the implications. Are you saying this thing has been alive for millions of years? That's exactly what I'm saying, Lisa replied. And it's been alone all this time, just watching and learning, until now. The patterns changed again, and this time they showed something different. Jake could see representations of different species, alien creatures that looked nothing like humans. Some were small and quick, others were large and slow. Some seemed to be made of energy rather than matter. It's showing us other species it has encountered, Lisa said. But look at what happens to them. Jake watched as the patterns showed the alien species approaching the nebula, just like the horizon had done. But in each case, the aliens would stay for a short time and then leave, never to return. They got scared, Betty said softly. They couldn't understand what it was, so they ran away. The patterns shifted one more time, and now they showed the horizon approaching the nebula. But this time, instead of leaving, the little ship stayed and tried to communicate. The patterns seemed to pulse with something that felt like joy. It's happy that we're here, Jake said, understanding flooding through him. It's been waiting for someone to talk to it. Suddenly, new patterns appeared on all their screens at once. These were more complex than anything they had seen before, and they seemed to be coming from all around them. The nebula was focusing its attention on their small ship. Betty's hands shook as she watched the patterns. Captain, it's trying to tell us something important. These patterns are more complex than human language. It's like it's trying to fit the knowledge of millions of years into signals we can understand. Lisa was recording everything, her eyes wide with wonder. This is incredible. It's giving us a compressed history of the galaxy, information that would take our scientists centuries to discover. Jake felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. Can we understand it all? Not yet, Betty admitted. But I think it knows that. It's starting simple and building up. It's teaching us its language step by step. The patterns continued for hours, growing more complex as the nebula tested their understanding. Jake watched his crew work tirelessly to decode the messages, their excitement growing with each breakthrough. Then Just as Jake was beginning to feel overwhelmed by the flood of information, the patterns suddenly simplified. 3 simple pulses appeared on the screen, repeating over and over. "What does that mean?" Jake asked. Betty stared at the screen for a long moment. "I think it's asking for our name." "It's telling us its name and asking for ours." "What is its name?" "The pattern suggests something like the eternal drift or the wandering mind. It's hard to translate exactly, but it's something that moves through space forever, thinking and learning." Jake took a deep breath. This was the moment that would change everything. "Tell it we're called humans. Tell it we come from a small planet called Earth." Betty's fingers moved over her keyboard, translating Jake's words into the mathematical language the Nebula understood. The response came immediately. The patterns on the screen pulsed with what could only be described as excitement. "It likes the name," Betty said, smiling for the first time in hours. "It's asking about Earth, about our species. It wants to know everything about us." Jake looked around at his crew. They were exhausted but exhilarated. They had made contact with something ancient and vast, something that had been waiting in the darkness of space for eons. "Tell it we want to learn about each other," Jake said. "Tell it we're not afraid and we won't run away like the others did." The patterns on the screen pulsed brighter, and Jake could almost feel the joy radiating from the massive entity surrounding them. First contact had been made, and it was just the beginning of the most important conversation in human history. The Nebula had found friends at last, and humanity had discovered they were not alone in the universe. But more than that, they had found something that had been waiting for them for millions of years, something that had stories to tell and knowledge to share. The real adventure was about to begin. 3 days had passed since the UES Horizon first made contact with the Eternal Drift. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching his crew work around the clock to improve their communication with the ancient entity. The Nebula had become more patient with them, slowing down its thought processes so the humans could keep up. "Captain, I think I understand how it experiences time," said Dr. Lisa Carter, looking up from her research station. She had dark circles under her eyes, but refused to rest. "What feels like a quick conversation to us takes place over many hours for the Nebula. It's like trying to have a chat with a mountain." Jake nodded, still amazed by what they had discovered. "And it's been alone all this time? For millions of years?" Lisa replied. "It showed me images of the galaxy when it was young. Stars that died before Earth was even formed. It remembers everything, Captain. Every civilization that ever existed in this part of space." Communications Officer Betty Williams turned around in her chair. "Captain, it's sharing more stories with us. This latest batch is about a species called the Builders. They created massive structures around stars, but they're all gone now. The Nebula watched them disappear about 2 million years ago." Jake felt a chill thinking about entire civilizations that had lived and died while this entity drifted through space. "What happened to them?" "War," Betty said simply. "The Nebula showed me images of their final battle. Ships as big as moons fighting each other until nothing was left. It tried to warn them, but they couldn't understand its messages." "Engineer." Tom Baker looked up from his workstation. Tom was a quiet man who usually kept to himself, but the past few days had changed him. "Captain, I've been working on a better communication system. The Nebula has been helping me understand how to build it. The technology it's sharing with us is incredible." "What kind of technology?" Jake asked. "Energy manipulation techniques that our scientists back on Earth would think are impossible. It's showing me how to bend space and time, how to create matter from pure energy. This thing knows secrets that could change everything for humanity." Jake walked over to look at Tom's designs. The blueprints on his screen showed devices that looked more like art than machines. "Are you sure this will work?" "The Nebula has been using these techniques for millions of years. It's how it stays alive and thinks across such vast distances. If we can build even a simple version, we could communicate with it much faster." Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks called from his navigation station. "Captain, I'm detecting something interesting." "The Nebula is moving us." Jake spun around. "Moving us where?" It's deeper into its core, but it's being very gentle about it. It's like being carried by a giant, invisible hand. I think it wants to show us something. The ship glided through the glowing gas clouds, and Jake could see they were heading toward a brighter region in the center of the nebula. The colors around them changed from purple and pink to gold and white. It was beautiful, but Jake felt nervous about going deeper into the entity's body. "Betty, ask it what it wants to show us," Jake said. Betty's fingers moved over her keyboard, translating Jake's question into the mathematical language they had developed. The response came quickly, appearing as complex patterns on her screen. "It says it wants to show us its memory core," Betty said, her voice filled with wonder. "The place where it stores all the knowledge it has gathered over millions of years." As they moved deeper, the space around them began to change. The random swirls of gas became more organized, forming patterns that looked almost like the inside of a giant brain. Streams of energy flowed between different regions, carrying information at the speed of light. "My God," whispered Lisa. "We're inside its mind." Jake stared out the window at the incredible sight. They were traveling through thoughts made visible, watching the process of thinking on a scale never before imagined. "Is this safe?" "It's being very careful with us," Ryan said. "Our shields are holding, and the radiation levels are actually lower here than they were on the outside." The ship came to rest in a vast chamber made of swirling energy. All around them, images appeared and disappeared in the glowing walls. Jake could see the birth of stars, the formation of planets, and the rise and fall of countless civilizations. "It's showing us its memories," Betty said, her voice barely above a whisper. "All the things it has seen and learned." The images around them changed, focusing on different alien species. Jake saw beings made of crystal who lived on frozen worlds, gas creatures who danced in the atmospheres of giant planets, and mechanical beings who had turned themselves into living computers. "So many different kinds of life," Lisa said, recording everything she could. "And it knew them all." The nebula began to share more personal memories. Jake watched as it showed them how it had tried to communicate with other species, always failing because they couldn't understand what it was or were too afraid to try. Some species had even attacked it, thinking it was a threat. "That's why it's so happy we're here," Betty said. "We're the first ones to really try to understand it." The images shifted to show the nebula's lonely existence, drifting through space, with no one to talk to. Jake felt sad watching the entity's memories of isolation. No living thing should have to be alone for so long. "Captain," Tom said, "it's offering to share its technology with us. Not just communication devices, but everything it has learned. Medicine, energy production, space travel techniques that would let us explore the entire galaxy." Jake felt the weight of the decision. What does it want in return? Betty worked for several minutes to translate the nebula's complex response. "It wants to learn about us. About human emotions, our art, our stories. It's especially interested in how we deal with having such short lives." "Short lives?" Jake asked. "To something that has existed for millions of years, our entire species is like a brief flash of light. But it finds us fascinating because we accomplish so much in such a short time." The nebula began showing them more recent memories, civilizations that had existed only thousands of years ago. Jake recognized some of the star patterns from human space maps. "It's been watching our region of space," Lisa said. "It might have seen early human civilizations." The images confirmed her guess. Jake watched, amazed, as the nebula showed them Earth from space, long before humans had developed space travel. It had been observing humanity's development for thousands of years. "It's been waiting for us to develop enough to reach it," Betty said. "It knew we would eventually come looking for it." Jake felt a strange mixture of honor and responsibility. "Why us? Why not one of the other species?" The nebula's response was complex, but Betty managed to translate it. "It says humans are different. Most species become satisfied with what they know, but humans always keep asking questions. We explore not because we have to, but because we want to know what's out there." The images around them changed again, showing human space missions, the first colonies on Mars, the development of faster-than-light travel. The Nebula had been watching it all, waiting for the day when humans would be ready to meet it. "It's been preparing for this moment," Tom said. "All the technology it's offering us, it's been thinking about how to share it with humans specifically." Jake walked to the center of the bridge, looking out at the swirling memories surrounding them. "What happens now?" "It wants to form a partnership," Betty said. "It will share its knowledge and protect human colonies from cosmic threats. In return, we help it communicate with other species and share our stories and experiences." Jake thought about the implications. Humanity could become the bridge between this ancient entity and the rest of the galaxy. They could help end millions of years of loneliness while gaining knowledge that would advance their civilization by centuries. "Tell it we accept," Jake said. "Tell it that humans would be honored to be its friends." The chamber around them pulsed with bright light, and Jake could feel the joy radiating from the nebula. After millions of years of isolation, the eternal drift had finally found the companions it had been waiting for. The age of loneliness was over, and the age of cooperation was about to begin. The UES Horizon had been inside the eternal drift for a week now, and the crew had settled into a routine of constant discovery. Captain Jake Morrison watched his team work with an energy he had never seen before. They were all part of something that would change humanity forever. "Captain, look at this," said Dr. Lisa Carter, her eyes bright with excitement. She had been working with the nebula to understand its biological systems. "It's showing me how it heals itself. The techniques could revolutionize human medicine." Jake walked over to her station and saw images of the nebula repairing damaged sections of itself. Broken gas clouds reformed, dead areas came back to life, and damaged neural pathways grew new connections. It was like watching wounds heal instantly. "How does it work?" Jake asked. "It manipulates matter at the atomic level," Lisa explained. "It can rearrange atoms to create whatever it needs. Broken tissue, new organs, even entirely new body parts. If we could adapt this technology for humans, we could cure diseases that have plagued us for centuries." Engineer Tom Baker looked up from his workstation. "Captain, I've finished the new communication device. With the nebula's help, I built something that can translate our thoughts directly into its language." Jake examined the device Tom had created. It looked like a simple headband with small lights along its surface. "Is it safe?" "The nebula tested it on me first," Tom said. "It's completely safe. In fact, it's incredible. Instead of typing messages, I can think them, and the device translates them instantly." Communications Officer Betty Williams had been working on a different project. "Captain, I've been documenting human history for the nebula. It's fascinated by our wars, our art, our music. But what interests it most is how we love each other despite knowing we're going to die." Jake nodded. The nebula had asked many questions about human emotions, especially love and sacrifice. It was hard to explain these feelings to something that had lived for millions of years and had never experienced loss. "What does it think about human love?" Jake asked. "It's amazed by it," Betty replied. "It can't understand how we can care so deeply about other people when we know our time together is so short. To something that lives forever, our relationships must seem like brief flashes of light." The nebula had been sharing its own experiences in return. Jake had learned that it had tried to form connections with other entities like itself, but they were too far apart in space to communicate easily. The eternal drift was essentially alone among its own kind. "Captain," said Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks, "I'm reading some interesting changes in the nebula's structure. It's growing stronger, more organized. I think our presence is affecting it somehow." Jake had noticed the same thing. The nebula seemed more focused since they had arrived, its thoughts clearer and more directed. "How is that possible?" "I think it's because it finally has someone to talk to," Lisa said. "For millions of years, it's been thinking alone. Now it has to organize its thoughts to share them with us. It's like exercising a muscle that hasn't been used in a long time." The ship's security chief, Alex Turner, had been quiet for most of the week. Alex was a careful man who worried about dangers that others might miss. Finally, he spoke up. Captain, I've been thinking about the implications of what we're doing. This entity has technology that could make humanity the most powerful species in the galaxy. But what happens when other species find out about our partnership? Jake had been wondering the same thing. What do you mean? If other civilizations learn that we have access to this kind of knowledge, they might see us as a threat. Some might even try to attack us to get the technology for themselves. The Nebula had been listening to their conversation, and it responded through the new communication device. Tom put on the headband and relayed its message. It says it's thought about this problem, Tom said. It's willing to share its protection with humanity. Any species that tries to attack us would have to deal with it first. Jake felt both relief and concern. Having such a powerful protector was reassuring, but it also meant humanity would become dependent on the Nebula for defense. What does it want in return for this protection? Jake asked. Tom listened to the Nebula's response. It wants us to help it contact other species. It thinks humans might be able to serve as interpreters between it and civilizations that are afraid of it. Betty had been translating more of the Nebula's memories. Captain, it's showing me something important. There are other conscious nebulas scattered throughout the galaxy. They've been isolated from each other for millions of years. Jake felt excited by this news. Can we help them communicate with each other? That's exactly what it's hoping, Betty said. It wants to use human ships as messengers, carrying communications between the different nebulas. We could help end their loneliness forever. The idea of helping reconnect ancient minds that had been separated for eons appealed to Jake. It seemed like something humans were uniquely suited to do. What about the technology it's offering us? Jake asked. How much can we actually understand? Lisa had been working on this problem. It's starting with the simplest concepts and building up. The medical techniques I mentioned are just the beginning. It's also showing us new ways to generate energy, methods for faster space travel, and even techniques for creating artificial gravity. Tom nodded enthusiastically. The engineering applications are incredible. We could build ships that are 10 times faster than anything we have now. We could create space stations that are completely self-sufficient. We could even terraform planets in decades instead of centuries. Jake thought about what this would mean for humanity. With the Nebula's knowledge, they could expand throughout the galaxy, establishing colonies on worlds that were currently unreachable. But there's something else, Betty said. It's not just sharing technology with us, it's learning from us too. Our stories, our emotions, our way of looking at the universe. It says we're teaching it things it never knew were possible. Jake was curious about this. What kind of things? The concept of sacrifice, Betty explained. It understands that we're willing to risk our lives for others, even people we don't know. It finds this fascinating because it's never had to make choices like that. The Nebula had been particularly interested in human stories about heroes who gave their lives to save others. It couldn't understand why someone would choose to die for strangers, but it was eager to learn more about this aspect of human nature. It's also learning about creativity, Lisa added. It's amazed by human art, music, and literature. It has perfect memory and can recall everything it has ever experienced, but it's never created anything new just for the joy of creating. Jake realized that the exchange was changing both species. Humanity was gaining incredible knowledge and technology, but the Nebula was learning about emotions, creativity, and the beauty of brief, intense experiences. Captain, Tom said, it's asking if we would be willing to take some of its essence. With us, when we return to Earth, not enough to harm it, but enough to establish a permanent communication link. Jake thought about this request. Having a piece of the Nebula on Earth would revolutionize human science and technology. But it would also mean that humanity would never be the same. What do you think? Jake asked his crew. I think it's the next step in human evolution, Lisa said. We're not just discovering new technology, we're learning to think in new ways. It could be the beginning of a new age for humanity, Betty added. An age where we're not alone in the universe. Jake looked out at the swirling patterns of light that surrounded them. The nebula had been waiting for millions of years for this moment, and humanity was about to take its biggest step toward becoming a truly galactic civilization. "Tell it yes," Jake said. "Tell it we would be honored to carry part of it back to Earth." The chamber around them pulsed with bright, joyful light, and Jake knew that everything was about to change forever. 2 weeks had passed since the UES Horizon first entered the Eternal Drift, and now it was time to leave. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching his crew prepare for the journey back to Earth. Everything had changed during their stay inside the nebula, and nothing would ever be the same again. "Captain, the communication relay is ready," said Engineer Tom Baker. He had spent days working with the nebula to create a device that would let Earth stay in contact with the ancient entity. The device looked like a small crystal, but it pulsed with the same light as the nebula itself. Dr. Lisa Carter had finished loading all the medical data the nebula had shared. "This information will save millions of lives, Captain. We have cures for diseases that our doctors thought were impossible to treat." Communications Officer Betty Williams was organizing the historical records the nebula had given them. "The knowledge of past civilizations in here could help humanity avoid the mistakes that destroyed other species. We have star maps showing safe routes through the galaxy and warnings about dangerous regions." Jake felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. They were carrying information that would change human civilization forever. But they were also carrying something even more precious, the trust of a being that had been alone for millions of years. "How is our passenger doing?" Jake asked. Tom checked his instruments. "The essence is stable. It's just a small part of the nebula's consciousness, but it's enough to maintain communication across any distance. It's like having a direct phone line to the most ancient mind in the galaxy." The nebula had explained that the essence would grow slowly on Earth, eventually becoming large enough to think independently while remaining connected to the main entity. It would be humanity's guide and teacher, helping them understand the advanced technology they had been given. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks looked up from his navigation station. "Captain, we're ready to depart. The nebula has cleared a path for us to the edge of its boundary." Jake walked to the center of the bridge and put on the communication headband Tom had built. He wanted to say goodbye to the Eternal Drift personally. "We're ready to leave," Jake thought, and the device translated his words into the nebula's language. The response came immediately, filling Jake's mind with feelings of gratitude and friendship. The nebula was sad to see them go, but it was also excited about the future they would build together. "It's thanking us," Jake said to his crew. "It says the past 2 weeks have been the happiest time in its entire existence." Betty wiped tears from her eyes. "Tell it we'll be back. Tell it this is just the beginning." Jake nodded and sent the message. The nebula's response was warm and full of hope. It would wait for their return, and it would be ready to welcome other human ships when they came. The UES Horizon began to move, gliding through the glowing gas clouds toward the edge of the nebula. As they traveled, Jake could see the patterns of light around them changing. The nebula was saying goodbye in its own way, creating beautiful displays of color and movement. "Captain," Ryan said, "we're approaching the boundary. Once we cross, it will be back in normal space." Jake took one last look at the incredible sight around them. They were leaving the mind of a being older than their entire species, carrying with them knowledge that would transform humanity's future. The ship crossed the boundary, and suddenly they were surrounded by stars again. The nebula was behind them now, still beautiful, but no longer the living, thinking entity they had come to know. Jake felt a moment of sadness at leaving their new friend. "Setting course for Earth," Ryan announced. "Estimated travel time, 4 months." The journey home gave the crew time to process everything they had experienced. Jake spent hours each day talking to the nebula's essence, learning more about the galaxy and humanity's place in it. "It's amazing how much it knows," Jake told Lisa during one of their evening meetings. "It's seen civilizations rise and fall, watched stars being born and dying. But what fascinates it most is how humans can find meaning in such short lives. Lisa nodded. I think we're teaching it something important, that life doesn't have to be long to be meaningful. That love and friendship can be powerful even when they're brief. Tom had been working with the Essence to understand the technology they had been given. Captain, I think I'm beginning to understand how their faster-than-light travel works. It's not about moving through space quickly. It's about folding space so that distant points become close to each other. How long would it take us to build ships using this technology? Jake asked. With the Nebula's help, maybe 5 years for the first prototype. But once we understand the principles, we could build an entire fleet. We could reach any star in the galaxy within months instead of years. Betty had been studying the historical records. Captain, I've found something interesting. The Nebula remembers Earth's ancient history. It watched our earliest civilizations develop. It even saw the dinosaurs. Jake found this incredible. What does it think about human development? It's impressed by how quickly we've advanced. Most species take millions of years to develop space travel. Humans did it in just a few thousand years. It thinks we're the fastest learning species it has ever encountered. As they got closer to Earth, Jake began to worry about how humanity would react to their discovery. They were bringing back proof that humans were not alone in the universe, along with technology that would change everything. How do we explain this to Earth Command? Jake asked his crew during one of their planning meetings. We tell them the truth, Lisa said. We found something incredible and it wants to be our friend. But will they believe us? Betty asked. The technology alone will seem impossible to them. The Essence will prove it, Tom said. Once they see it communicate, once they experience what we've experienced, they'll understand. 3 months into their journey, they received a message from Earth Command asking for a status report. Jake decided to tell them everything. Earth Command, this is Captain Morrison of the UES Horizon. We have made contact with an intelligent alien entity. It is friendly and wishes to establish a partnership with humanity. We are returning with advanced technology and a representative of the entity. Prepare for the most important first contact in human history. The response took several hours to arrive due to the distance. When it came, Jake could hear the shock in Admiral Peterson's voice. Captain Morrison, please confirm your last message. Did you say you have made contact with an alien intelligence? Confirmed, Admiral. We have been guests inside a conscious nebula for 2 weeks. It has existed for millions of years and wants to help humanity advance. We are bringing back technology. That will revolutionize our civilization. The rest of the journey was filled with constant messages from Earth, scientists, politicians, and military leaders all wanted to know more about the discovery. Jake answered their questions as best he could, but he knew they wouldn't truly understand. Until they met the Essence themselves. Finally, after 4 months of travel, Earth appeared on their screens. Jake felt emotional seeing his home planet again, but he also felt excited about what was to come. Earth Command, this is the UES Horizon requesting permission to dock, Jake said into his communicator. Permission granted, Captain. Welcome home. The entire planet is waiting to hear your story. As the ship approached Earth's orbital station, Jake could see dozens of other vessels waiting for them. Scientists, reporters, and government officials were all eager to learn about humanity's new cosmic friend. Are you ready for this? Jake asked his crew. Ready, Captain, they replied together. Jake looked at the small crystal that contained the nebula's essence. Soon, all of humanity would know that they were not alone in the universe. They had found a friend among the stars, a teacher who would guide them as they took their first steps toward becoming a truly galactic civilization. The age of isolation was over. The age of cosmic friendship had begun, and humanity would never be the same again. The eternal drift had waited millions of years for this moment, and now its patience had been rewarded. Together, humans and the ancient nebula would explore the galaxy, helping other species and spreading the message that no thinking being had to be alone. The universe had become a much more welcoming place.